What's up, everybody? It is Simon Short in the Simon and Friends podcast here on YouTube. Thanks for checking this out. Austin is here from Tricky Takes, a fellow Box Score Network podcast. Make sure you are checking out everything on Box Score Network, but make sure you're going and checking out Austin on Tricky Takes as well. Austin, how you doing?
Hey man, doing good.
Excellent. We are going to dive into receivers here real quick. Day one and day two of the draft are over. It is Saturday morning here on the East Coast as we record this, or about to get going into day three. But we wanted to do a quick check in on the wide receiver position. Wide receiver is Austin's niche. He's going to tell us his favorite fits, his top three favorite fits, his top three most confusing fits of the wide receivers that have been drafted so far of the, I believe, 16 that have gone between the first 2 days of the NFL draft. So Austin, go ahead and get in there. What's your number one positive? What's your number one good fit you want to dive into today?
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about my guy in this draft class, Rome Odunze, who I had an almost equivalent grade to Marvin Harrison Jr.
Hmm.
I think he is so insanely talented. He would be wide receiver one. If anyone remembers, if anyone ever listened to Tricky Takes when we were talking about how high I was on Garrett Wilson, because
Hmm.
Garrett Wilson was the highest graded receiver I'd ever had until Romo Dunze and Marvin Harrison. So like I just absolutely am in love with this kid. I think his fit in Chicago is going to be fantastic because he can play on the outside, and both DJ Moore and Keenan are both fantastic at kind of moving around the offense, and you can just stick Odunze out there at an X, or even he can play flanker, but you can just stick him out there at the X and just let him go to work, and he will be fantastic. He will open up so much for Keenan Allen and DJ Moore underneath. And DJ Moore, don't get me wrong, absolutely fantastic deep down the field. His when he first came into the league with Carolina, he was kind of
Hmm.
known for being a deep ball guy and having a lot of kind of yards per catch, but I think he showed last year he's actually way more capable of a full receiver kind of route tree. I think Odunze has that in his bag too, but with their current fit and with Caleb Williams coming in to play quarterback for the Bears, I think this wide receiver room is probably now my favorite in the league. I think they just automatically jumped to number one favorite for me.
It's so incredible when you can have your finishing piece be a guy as versatile and can be in a position as prominent as Adunze as your X receiver. Because yeah, you've got the big play guy in DJ, whether it's deep or yak opportunities. You got Keenan work in the field, and then let's not forget. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan, but DeAndre Swift as a pass catching back out of the backfield. You got Cole Kmet as your typical Y receiver, tough catch, tough hands, and then a Gerald Everett H back move tight end type, full complement of pass catchers for Caleb Williams. And let's talk about the fact that they actually got him at 9. I mean, I was fully convinced going into Thursday that that wasn't going to happen anymore, right? It had gotten such a comfy place for everyone to mock Odunze to 9 to the Bears. And I was so sure that someone was going to trade into the Falcons spot at 8 and just take him there. Whether it was the Jags, whether it was the Bills coming all the way up, I was so sure that that wasn't going to happen. And to get him just right there at 9 to complement that pass catcher group is a really, really good move.
Yeah, I definitely had him going inside the top six. I really
Mhm.
thought we were gonna see Neighbors and Odunze back to back. There at like 5 and 6 was kind
Mhm,
of my
mhm,
prediction.
mhm.
Whether it either way, I mean I totally understand the Malik Neighbors hype. I'm totally down with it. I just have an absurd grade on Odunze.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and the vibes coming out of the first round of the draft on the two guys could also not be more in different directions. Neighbors does not look particularly happy. He also doesn't seem to know his quarterback's name, so that's a tough look. Give me your second favorite fit right now for the receivers that went between the first 2 days of the NFL draft.
So this one is a little contingent because he's going, the next two actually both are. They're a little contingent on what the team does with their players who are requesting trades. Um,
Uh-huh.
so
Uh-huh.
I'm going to go first round receiver, Ricky Pearsall. And
Yeah, baby.
watching him uh, just, I became infatuated with what he could do off the ball. He's not a super guy I'm confident in sticking directly on the line and getting off press man. He can do it. He's not great at it. And I assume, there's going to be a rough transition to the NFL and press man
Mm.
because college press man versus NFL press man
Right.
is just totally different beast.
Yep.
So I really love him. If Brandon Ayuk stays on the 49ers and can just stick out there at X, and you put Ricky Pearsall as your flanker
Hmm.
and just let him be off the ball, lined up with George Kittle on the line, and then him a little bit farther outside off the ball, let those two work together, it's going to be incredible. He has insane deep speed, he has insane hands, and he is a pretty good technician in his ability to set guys up. I really like how he was able to kind of combo routes. Like you would
Hmm.
see him
Hmm.
run a really beautiful post
Hmm.
and then 3 plays later run a post corner off that and just be
Hmm.
wide open. And
Hmm.
I think that's one of the traits that I really like in a receiver. Um, yeah, the ability to run a good route and then kind of use that as a setup to throw a different route at him. He showed some of the best ability to do that in this draft class. So big Ricky Pearsall fan, but I don't want he's not Brandon Ayuk. He's
Right.
not a replacement. If they trade away Brandon Ayuk and try to put Ricky to do what Ayuk did, it's not quite the same. Now, I think if anyone can work with that, it's Kyle Shanahan.
Hmm.
He knows the differences, I'm sure. So, I think they'd probably be all right, but I think he's at his best if Ayuk's still there. Debo, I think, can be gone. Debo
Hmm.
being
Hmm.
there won't affect Pearsall or not.
Yeah, you wouldn't ask Pearsall to do the Debo stuff, but I definitely
He,
think when the pick happened, I know a lot of people were like, okay, Ayuk's getting traded tomorrow, and I'm with you. I love them as a complement all to each other, and maybe if you can't get an extension done with Ayuk, there's a role he could step into a little more in year two. But I like the fit here year one with all of them.
yeah, he absolutely could do some of the Debo stuff. I don't think out of the backfield he could,
Right.
but in the short passing game and even some of like the end around type stuff, I think he's extremely fast
Yes.
and runs well with the ball in his hand. He's not like a running back. He's not Malachi Corley in this draft class or anything like that. But he looks very natural with the ball in his hand. So he can definitely do some of the Debo stuff.
Absolutely. All right, and get to your third favorite fit. I think I know where you're going with this.
Yeah. So I already kind of talked about this another guy who depends on this receiver situation. Jermaine Burton. He was my wide receiver 6 this
Seven,
year. I just
six.
looked. He is a plug and play NFL ready receiver in every facet of the game. He's got incredible hands, just like Ricky. He's got pretty good speed, not quite Ricky Pearsall level, but he is so good off the line. Like his release package is NFL caliber already. And so I'm not worried if he has to go stand on the line. He's
Mm-hmm.
not quite,
Hmm. Hmm.
um, Marv, but
Right.
like I'm not worried about putting him on the line and asking him to go run a full NFL route tree day one. He's totally capable of that. Um, his production wasn't all that fantastic at Alabama, but when I kind of plug him into my spreadsheet, which I have that kind of calculates stuff on more of a rate basis and then also takes into account like their physical scores, he got a 0.96 out of a possible like one. So there was only two guys in the draft class who had a higher combo. Um, and they were Brian Thomas Jr. and Romo Dunze. So big fan of Jermaine Burton. If I've talked about this before. He had a kind of a rough situation. He went to like five
Yep.
different
Hmm.
schools, between high school and college. Hasn't seemed to have just some stability in his life. I think getting into the NFL, having that stability will do wonders for him. He obviously had some off the field issues that dropped him to the pick he went in the third round.
Hmm.
Because without concerns, he's probably going around the same time Ricky Pearsall is.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, that'll be definitely interesting to see. The Bengals last 2 years have drafted a couple guys kind of in preparation for what happens with T. Higgins. It'll be interesting to see if Burton is the guy that emerges as that number two option over the next year or two. Let's go to the other way. Let's go with some of your more confusing fits or picks you did not like at the receiver position.
Okay, I talked about this one as well before. Xavier Worthy to the Chiefs, man. I don't think he's fine. I like Xavier Worthy. But like he went too early. I understand that like Pat Mahomes just fell in love with him and do whatever you got to do to keep Pat Mahomes happy. Just straight up. If
Hmm.
he
Hmm.
told me I want Luke McCaffrey in the first round if I'm the GM, sure, sure, Pat,
Right.
go
Hmm.
for it. But you know, the speed's there. The speed shows up on tape too. He's not one of
Hmm.
those guys who runs super fast at the combine, and then when you put the pads on, you're like, where'd all that speed go? No, it's there.
Hmm.
And even like when you compare him to a guy he was lined up with and AD Mitchell, like the speed's there, and AD's fast, and
Hmm.
Xavier's
Hmm.
faster.
Yep.
So that's the whole kind of point to it. But they just signed Hollywood Brown. I guess this is saying, hey, we're probably not going to keep Hollywood Brown. And you know, the Chiefs have tried to go after these big speed guys. You had MVS, you have Mecole
Hmm.
Hardman, and they
Hmm.
don't work out just because Pat Mahomes is there to throw in the ball deep. They have to
Hmm.
have the skill sets like Tyreek Hill did.
Hmm.
And I don't think X is Tyreek Hill. I
Right.
I see him as being a successful NFL receiver. I think he would have been of great value if he went late second round. But with that speed, it just boosted his draft stock. We knew he was
Hmm.
going to get drafted late first, early second. I'm not convinced he's going to turn into. I know he's not going to turn into Tyreek Hill. I hope
Right.
he can be more than an MVS. You know, I really hope he can.
It'll be really interesting to see what going to the Chiefs infrastructure with Patrick Mahomes with Andy Reid brings out of him. But like you said, they've tried that with a couple guys. So hopefully this one can stick a little bit more. Let's go to your next one. What's your next most confusing or least favorite fit?
Okay. I'm gonna get burned for this one, I think. Xavier Legette. Um, I just never kind of got on the hype train with Xavier Legette.
Hmm.
Um, his production profile and his athletic profile didn't kind of mesh well for me, and that like I've
Right.
got a spreadsheet where I put all this stuff in and it kind of puts out a good number, and his number wasn't good. Uh, and that's not to say that automatically means he's not going to be great because you have to combine that with the film. And actually, Marv, his production number and his number that it
Hmm.
output wasn't great for me.
Hmm. Hmm.
But when you match it with the film, it just aligns
Yep.
and it kind of clears out any questions. Xavier doesn't do that, and I know he had some issues, you know, family issues and stuff like that when he was in
Hmm.
college and then kind of broke out his last year. He's pretty good after the catch. He's really good after the catch.
Hmm. Hmm.
He's decent at the catch point, but I just don't like his ability to get open that much. I think he kind of relies too much on um, his speed
Hmm.
and doesn't kind of do those technician type things that you
Yep.
really like in a receiver. And I don't think that fits well in Carolina.
Hmm.
If you look at who the most successful guy in Carolina was last year, and Adam Thielen,
Hmm.
it wasn't because Adam Thielen was blazing speed. It was because he got separation in the short and intermediate areas, and that's what Bryce Young seemed to kind of favor the most. And there wasn't really any other guys getting open at all. So like maybe you can say it was just because Adam was the only one that he seemed to
Right.
like it, but
Hmm.
that's what he seemed to like. Bryce Young seemed to like, and I would have much preferred like a Lad McConkey at
Hmm.
that pick
Hmm.
because Lad McConkey is going to get that separation no matter who he's lined up against, just because he's that technical and that refined. And even like a Jalen Polk who went to
Hmm.
New England,
Hmm.
he's a guy, even if he's not super open, I trust him to make the catch.
Right.
Xavier Legette, if he's not open, I don't think he's going to come down with that many balls. He's just not that type of receiver.
Right. I think I have a feeling you're going to ultimately be right in this because it is the Panthers and it's a bad situation for just about anybody. You do wonder if it's the idea of just trying to build the basketball room, right? Like, okay, we've got, and they get Deontay Johnson, right? So you get your quick separator, you got Thielen, who's your savvy separator, and then it's just like, let's just get big, fast dude. They tried it last year. That hasn't worked out quite yet, but we'll see. I think you're ultimately going to be proven right just because horrible situation to go into for anybody. Give me your last one. What's your last not great fit, not great draft pick?
I mean, it's just Luke McCaffrey, guys. I mean, what are we doing here? What are we doing?
Yeah,
I
poor,
mean,
poor Luke.
the Billy and Connor like Luke McCaffrey a lot more than I do. They talked about him as their day three favorite guy. Not,
Interesting.
I mean,
Hmm.
again, last pick of day two, so I guess it's kind of there, but like, I don't know. He doesn't he doesn't pop on tape. He doesn't show really the skill set of an NFL caliber receiver. He can develop. He's assuming he's anything like his family because that whole
Yep.
family's kind of insane. He's got a
Yep.
great work ethic
Hmm.
and will put in the work to develop. But if you're drafting a guy day three, you want that guy to be able to come in and have a pretty immediate impact. This
Hmm.
isn't round three is not the round to take a developmental receiver, especially when you've got some other guys on the board who are pretty high end talents in terms of like ability to just kind of step on a football field and have success. Luke McCaffrey's not that guy. You're not doing your rookie quarterback any favors. Now, they already like their room. So, in 3 years, if he develops, I think it could end up being fine. But like you're putting in a rookie receiver and you want to have just you want him to be in a wheelchair. You don't want crutches. You want him to just be able to just wheel him out there and be
Hmm.
like, hey, you got guys. And
Right.
um, they were pretty close to being able to do that. And then they drafted Luke McCaffrey.
You do wonder if, some of the things they talked about in the broadcast, like quarterback friendly, used to be a quarterback, the professional aspect. You wonder if that's part of their thinking. You do wonder about, okay, how do they see him fitting in the room with the new scheme and the coaching staff? Do they really think he's a good fit? There are some interesting guys to see that'll get drafted today. Troy Franklin obviously has fallen. You weren't a huge fan of Malik Washington. Was a guy that I thought was going to rise up boards and get there into the day two realm at some point. But we will just have to wait and see. Austin, thanks so much for joining the Simon and Friends podcast on YouTube. Make sure you are following here. Make sure you are checking out Instagram, TikTok. We're on there. And the Simon and Friends podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your pods, as well as Austin on Tricky Takes. That is tricky with two eyes, a Box Score Network podcast, and everything else on Box Score. So we appreciate you guys for checking out this video. Have fun and be safe out there.